Hey, welcome back. I'm Jana with Purl Together, and this week we're going to talk about knitting the body of our Maja cardigan and how we're going to handle the section that we're going to add that will be our target for when we cut the steek. Before we get started with that, I want to give a big hearty public thank you to two new patrons, Bonnie and Alexi, both from Canada. Thanks so much for joining the Patreon community over at www.patreon.com/Purl Together. If you're interested in becoming a patron, head over there and check out what I'm offering for your small monthly pledge. I really appreciate your support. That's what keeps these videos coming to you each and every week. So thank you so much for your generous pledges. All right. By now, you will have knitted your two sleeves and put them on waste yarn to set aside. So if they're a little bit off in terms of length, don't worry. We can try them on before we match everything up. There's been some discussion about how you know how long to knit the sleeves. Now, if you need to take a little out or add a little bit after we try things on, it's totally okay. But if you look at the schematic drawing on page 5, my take on that is that we're going to knit the sleeves and the body to where everything meets together and joins up at the fullest part of the bust. So if you look at that measurement around the middle of the bust, to me on the schematic, that looks like where everything joins up. So that's what I'm aiming for. So what I've done is knit the body up to that point, and then I'm going to match everything up with the sleeves, try them on the kid, and make sure everything is the length that she wants before we carry on. So let's get started with the knitting of the ribbing. Now the ribbing is super simple. I just knit that back and forth. You can knit it in the round and go ahead and add your steeking stitches if you want. I did it back and forth as directed by the pattern because it's just ribbing back and forth, and that's totally fine. So when we add the steeking stitches, what I want to talk about is the traditional way. From what I understand, the traditional Icelandic way to do that is as indicated in the pattern with the 2 purl stitches for the steeking section. Now I'm choosing to do my steek section, my steeking stitches a little bit differently, more the Fair Isle way, and you can do whatever you feel most comfortable with. Helene, the designer of this pattern, she does offer a tutorial video on her YouTube channel, which I will link in the video description down below. It's very clear. She uses a sewing machine to reinforce her steek, and she also shows how you can hand stitch if you don't have a sewing machine or you don't have a good relationship with your sewing machine like I don't. You can totally do it her way. The yarn amounts indicated in the pattern would be for those 2 purl stitches and, including those. I'm doing a crocheted reinforcement on my steek, which is just what I prefer. And I've done a different kind of steek where I've done 3 stitches here. And that's the 3 stitches that are indicated in between my stitch markers. So that's what I'm showing you on this video. It does add 1 more stitch. So if you're comfortable with the amount of yarn that you have, it does add another stitch, and that can impact the total amount of yarn that you need if you're adding 1 stitch, with every round. So be mindful of that. I prefer to do more like a 5 stitch steek, which is what we're doing with our sample swatch from before. And I wanted to do that to make it clear how the steeking procedure is going to go, which we'll practice before we actually cut our sweater. However, the reason I went with a 3 stitch steek, it's hard to say. The reason I went with 3 stitches on the sweater is because I thought, well, 2 purl stitches, how a purl stitch uses up more yarn than a knitting stitch. And I thought, well, if you wanted to do it the way I'm going to do it, hopefully that wouldn't impact your yardage as much as a 5 stitch steek. I hope that makes sense. So that's why I've only done 3. Now a 5 stitch steek will be a little bit bigger and maybe a little easier to deal with, but you need to make sure you have enough yarn. So the reason I only did 3 was hoping that would be a similar amount, 3 stitches compared to 2 purl stitches. I hope that makes sense. Or 3 knit stitches compared to 2 purl stitches would be more equitable. So carry on. If you want to do it the traditional way that the designer recommends, I'll put the video link to her YouTube tutorial for that down below. So go watch that before you begin the body part. Go watch that and see what you think. And then watch this video, and then you make the decision because you're the boss knitter. All right, you're the boss of your own knitting. Do what you feel is best. There's resources either way. So let's get started. Okay, I'm on page 3 of the instructions, and I've completed the ribbing. Okay, I'm at the end of the row where I've just completed the increases, and it says I want to do a backwards loop cast on and add 2 stitches. Now, as I mentioned before in the intro to this video, I'm going to add 3, and I'll show you why. If you choose to do the Purl steeking stitches, you can follow the designer's tutorial on her YouTube channel, which I will link below. I'm going to go ahead and add 3 stitches because I'm going to do it the Fair Isle method with crochet reinforcement, and so I'll need 3 for that because you need an odd number to do that. So the backwards cast on is simply taking the yarn over your index finger or your thumb, just turn over your hand and then put that needle up in there. Okay, so that your working yarn is coming off underneath or on the side toward me of the loop. Okay, so I'm going to do that 3 times. So again, wrap the yarn around your finger from the inside, from the outside in, and turn your hand over, put the needle up through. Okay, just one more then. All right, now we're going to join in the round. If you're doing it the way the pattern recommends, you're going to have these 2 stitches. You'll have 2 stitches here, and those will always be purled. And those are the stitches you're going to cut between when it comes time to steek. Again, I'm doing 3, and I'll show you how that's going to look. All right, I'm going to simply join in the round by just continuing to knit. And I'm going to make sure that I snug up that first stitch pretty tight, and also the second and third one. I want those to be pretty snug. So round 1 of the body chart is just knitting all the way around. So that's easy enough. All right, I've completed row 1 of the chart, and now I'm back to this 3 stitches that I did the backwards loop cast on. Now they are a little snug and a little, distorted just from me yanking things around on my needle. So I'm going to loosen this one up a little bit before I knit into it. Now I've also already attached my contrasting color, which I'm going to do the middle stitch of my steek in the contrasting color as well. Okay, so knit that middle stitch if you're following along with me. That's going to be your, what I like to call the target stitch, and I'll show you about that in just a moment. So there's my 3 extra steek stitches. I'm going to alternate those colors. Then I'm going to place another marker so that I'm just offsetting my steek stitches. Okay, now I'm going to begin the chart on the color work for row 2. So I'll go ahead and knit all the way around with my chart, and I'll show you what we're going to do here when we get back around again. We're going to maintain, as long as we are rows 1 through 9, we're going to maintain this column of stripes going vertically where we have the gray, the white, and the gray. Okay, one thing I want to point out and make super clear is that on the body chart, which is on the left-hand side of page 5, this one here, you've got 9 stitches across, but only stitches 2 through 9 repeat. So you just knit the first stitch as written, and then you repeat 2 through 9. So that's designated here. So just pay attention to that. So you know, because if you don't come out right at the end of your round, that could be why. So just be mindful of that. So I'm just going to carry on knitting the first knitting around row 2, and I'll show you again how I'm going to handle the steeking stitches at the end of the round. All right, I'm back to the beginning of the round here. And so all I want to do is, if you'll notice, the last stitch on row 2 was the lighter colored stitch, but all I want to do is go ahead and alternate the colors across my steeking stitches. So that carries the white across to the beginning of the new round, but also keeps my columns in place. I'm going to have vertical stripes here. When we cut the steek, we're going to focus on this white or light colored, or whatever color it is for you, but that's going to be color C from the chart. So we're going to focus on that when we get to the part where we're going to cut our knitting. So that's going to be your target line, if you will. So go ahead and carry on with your chart, and just keeping in mind that you need to keep that alternating column going across those middle 3 stitches. Again, if you're doing that along with me. If you're not, just do your purls as indicated in the pattern. Okay, as you can see, I have finished my colorwork section, and now I'm just knitting, round and round, back and forth, See my nifty stitch marker here from Ann Tudor. Love it. Anyway, that's my progress. I was measuring the length of this with my daughter, and we decided we needed another inch or so. So I just stuck that there so I could see what an inch would be. Anyway, back to the point. So I've done my color work, and you can see my steek here. So that white line is going up, and when I just extended the gray, I used that since that was the alternate color, like the pattern color, not the background color. So when I knit through this solid color section here, what I'll do, and you'll see this before we cut, is I'm going to go back and I'll put a thread right up here through the center of these stitches. So when I say that, I mean this is the right leg of that stitch and this is the left leg. And actually the part that we're going to end up cutting is the horizontal bar between. And so don't worry about that right now, but I'm just letting you know that that's the target line. And so don't bother trying to carry an alternate color through the solid section. It's not going to be a big deal. We'll mark everything clearly before we do anything drastic. So, okay, carry on through the color work section, and then I'll see you again for the join up when we join the sleeves and the body. Okay, I hope you found that video helpful. Let me know if you have any questions. You can join the Facebook group or the Ravelry Purl Together group, or both. You can also put a comment below if you have any questions. I appreciate your watching, and I look forward to seeing your works in progress photos. Post a photo in the Ravelry group or in the Facebook group. I'd love to see them. All right, until next time, I'll give you a couple of weeks to knit through the color work of the body, and then next time we'll talk about how to join everything together, and we'll be doing the yoke. That'll be a lot of fun as well. Okay, happy knitting and happy holidays.